last few here. Now there's not just archetypal characters, there's also archetypal plots. What I want you to have from this is certainly the guy's name, Christopher Booker. That's an important thing. You don't need to know he was a British journalist, but he wrote a book called The 7 Basic Plots. And in short, this is what the plots are. I would challenge you to tell me a movie or a TV show or a book or any of these kinds of things that does not follow one of these plots. And again, this is not Carl Jung, this is Christopher Booker. But he's taking Jung's ideas and applying them to plots. And you're going to find that every movie, every whatever, follows one of these 7. The first one is overcoming the monster. That's a protagonist, a character, sets out to overcome an antagonist. That's the most basic one. We see that kind of stuff all the time. It could be an external antagonist, it could be themselves, whatever. Rags to riches, someone becomes someone begins humble circumstances, and then they acquire wealth and power somehow. The quest, protagonists acquire an object to location. If anybody in here is like a supreme nerd and you like Lord of the Rings instead of Star Wars, that would be that. You're trying to acquire an object, the ring. A voyage and return. You go to a strange land and you overcome something, you come back from it. Comedy, challenging circumstances with some kind of a happy conclusion, even if it's a bittersweet conclusion. A tragedy, some sort of a personal character flaw leads to someone's demise. Or rebirth, an event that changes the protagonist, they become a better person. So everything that you watch, read, whatever, follows one of these 7 basic plots. So you get a sense now what I was talking about when I said that learning these things is great. It helps you to understand and interpret the world. It also makes you annoying to watch TV shows and movies with. Because the more familiar you are with these, the more experience you have, the more you can start to realize, oh, here's what's going to happen in this movie or this show. There'll be small differences, small changes, whatever. Anybody watch Cobra Kai, the new season?
Oh.
Yeah, something happens in there where I'm like, I don't like that, man. And it makes you uncomfortable because it didn't follow what I think it should have followed. And you know that that's kind of the judge of all humanity, right? Whatever I think should be done, yeah. So because they didn't follow, there's one little thing. It's on the last episode. I saw that and I was like, man, man. All right. And so going into a deep dive on one of them, have this guy's name also, Joseph Campbell. It's very important. He wrote a book called The Hero with 1,000 Faces, in which he took a deep dive into the one character type, the hero, and he showed what that looks like in history. And he goes back thousands of years. He looks at ancient plays, he looks at all kinds of things, and he demonstrates that when you have a story about a hero, it follows this general narrative. I don't know if anybody here is a Star Wars fan, but the guy who wrote Star Wars, George Lucas, he actually read this book, and he said, I'm going to write a movie based off of this. And he followed it to an absolute T, what Joseph Campbell said that the hero's journey was supposed to be. And he framed the whole story and everything around that book. And you can see how successful it was. And again, the idea is that this isn't writers who are telling us, here's what you're supposed to do. This is something that you intuitively know as an archetype. This is what the hero is supposed to do. This is what the jester is supposed to do. And then when something doesn't go that way, it makes us uncomfortable. Like, that's not what's supposed to happen. In this case, let me see if I have a bigger graphic of it here. Not really. I have a little bit of a bigger graphic. Essentially, it looks like this. And it's not going to do all of these. Some stories will, but this is kind of the overall structure that he points out. There are 17 points. You won't necessarily do all of them. But the more of those you do, the more perfectly it matches the type. There's some kind of a call to adventure. There's someone who shows up and says, like, hey, you have to, come on this great journey. And then there's usually like a refusal to do it. Like, for example, Harry Potter. Hagrid shows up and says, "You're a wizard, Harry." And he's like, "No, I'm not a hero. I'm not a wizard." He doesn't believe it. He rejects it. And then something happens where he discovers something supernatural that says, "Oh wow, wait, maybe I am," and it kind of snaps them out of it. So then they cross the first threshold, which is the acceptance of, okay, I'm going to go on this journey. A lot of us experience these things in our lives without, it's not in a book, but you experience these things in your life where there's some kind of a call for you to go do something interesting or exciting. And then we kind of refuse it, like, I don't know, maybe not. If you're into Star Wars, it'd be a funny thing if you think about it. At the very beginning, Luke Skywalker finds out that his father was a Jedi, and Obi-Wan tells him, hey, so come with me. And he says, I can't. Imagine if that's where the movie stops. And all of those amazing adventures that this guy goes on never happen because he refuses the call. That's what happens in our lives a lot of times. So the idea is that these are, again, very important. These are not just things that we see in literature. They're in literature because they exist in life around us. And what leads us to living unfulfilling lives or suffering from mental illnesses or other neuroses and things like that is that we reject our archetype and we don't follow the plot that we kind of have for us. And that, we refuse the call. And in our whole lives, we feel like we missed out on something important. So the categories: departure, initiation, and then the return. And that's the key right there. The hero always comes back and tells you about it. The hero returns so that we can all learn the lesson from the hero. So, questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques?